There are some things words can't explain, like how I, just a canine dog, knew my handler wasn't gone, even when the whole town was ready to bury him. I barked, I howled, and when they finally opened that coffin, what happened next left everyone in that room frozen in silence. I remember the dirt, dry, bitter. It got in my nose and clung to my fur, no matter how often I rolled or scratched or shook it off. Back then, everything smelled like iron and bark dust and something I'd later come to know as fear. But I didn't feel fear. Not yet. Just confusion. Just noise. I was one of a litter of 7, the last one out. Smallest, too. The handlers at Fort Bragg didn't think much of me. Said I was too reactive, too jumpy. I barked too loud and bit too hard. My first months were a blur of commands shouted in tones I didn't understand, hands grabbing my collar, leads yanking me back when I lunged. I learned quick enough what heel meant, but I didn't care much for staying beside someone who didn't look me in the eye. I wanted more than orders. I didn't know what it was, but I wanted it bad. The other pups, they found their partners fast. Tall men and women in olive green or dusty desert tan, the scent of gun oil and worn leather on them. They laughed sometimes, talked gently. They'd kneel, look their dogs straight in the eyes, and whisper things I couldn't make out. It felt like magic. One by one, my brothers and sisters were led away, tails wagging, noses pressed into strange chests. I was still in the cage, waiting, watching. The day he came, I'd already bitten one handler and nearly tore apart a rubber training sleeve. They were talking about washing me out, sending me to a shelter. Maybe someone would adopt me. Maybe I'd just be kept in the back, out of sight. Then he walked in. He wasn't like the others. Tall, but with a slight limp. One eye was a little lower than the other, and his jaw had a scar running across it that looked like a lightning bolt. He didn't wear the standard fatigues either. His jacket was darker, his boots more worn. He smelled like pine tar, rust, and something faintly sweet. Coffee. Real coffee. He stopped in front of my cage, didn't crouch, didn't call, just looked. I stared back. We stayed like that, neither moving for what felt like forever. Then, real slow, he reached up and unlocked the latch, swung the gate open wide. I didn't bolt, didn't growl. I walked out, stood in front of him, and waited. "You're a stubborn one," he said. His voice was deep, like gravel, not unfriendly, but not soft either. "You remind me of me." That's how I met Tommy Jensen. He didn't pick me. He saw me. The next few days, they said he was wasting his time, that I was untrainable. Tommy didn't argue. Just took me to the far end of the field, away from the rest. No distractions. No shouting. He sat in the grass, pulled out a tennis ball from his pocket. "I'm not going to make you into something you're not," he told me. "I'm just going to show you who you already are." That ball rolled toward me. I didn't fetch it. I tackled it, shook it like prey, then trotted back and dropped it at his boot. Tommy smiled. That was the beginning. We trained hard. Every morning before sunrise. Every evening after chow. Not just obedience. He taught me scent detection, explosives, hidden cell phones, bodies buried under sand. His patience was unlike anything I'd seen in the handlers before. When I failed, he didn't punish. He sat with me. Let me circle, sniff, panic if I needed to. He never raised his voice. He waited. I learned to trust his silence. One night, we were in the barracks alone. He was reading a letter. His face was different, tight, sad. He folded it up slow and slipped it into a jacket pocket, then turned to me. "You ever lose someone, Rex?" That was the first time he called me by name. "Rex, short for Regulus," he said. "Little king, you got that fight in your bones." I didn't understand all the words, but I knew the tone. It wasn't an order. It was an offering. From that day on, I was his. Tommy wasn't like the others. He didn't chase promotions, didn't bark orders at recruits, but the brass respected him, called him a quiet warrior. Me, I was the shadow that followed him, the teeth behind his calm. When we were finally deployed, Afghanistan, Camp Leatherneck, I was ready. I'd passed every test, top marks. The team said I was a hellhound with manners. But Tommy knew the truth. "I don't need you to be perfect," he said once, loading gear into the Humvee. "I need you to stay alive." That's when it hit me. I wasn't just some piece of equipment. I wasn't just a dog. I was family. He didn't say the word. He didn't need to. I could feel it in the way he tied my vest a little tighter on cold mornings, in the way he waited to eat until I'd finished mine, in the way his eyes softened every time I made it back to the base in one piece. We were soldiers, sure, but more than that, we were each other's only constant in a world that didn't care if either of us came home. And even then, I knew, one day, that bond would be tested in ways neither of us could imagine. But that's not this part of the story. This part. This is the part where a broken boy and a wild dog found each other and made a silent promise in a field of dirt and dreams, a promise we'd both keep until death tried to take one of us, and I refused to let go. You ever meet someone and just fit? Not like puzzle pieces, not perfect, but like weathered boots and old paths, each step worn in together until the rhythm stops needing thought. That was me and Tommy. We landed in Camp Pendleton after our initial deployment orders were shuffled. Desert heat and Pacific wind met in that place, and the Marines there, well, they were a different breed. Rowdy, proud, full of stories and nicknames, but they respected Tommy. They respected quiet, and that meant they respected me. He never kept me in a kennel, not unless the regulations made him. I slept by his cot, ate beside his chair. When the other dogs barked, whined, begged, I watched. I waited, because that's what Tommy did, and if he was still, I was still. If he moved, I moved. Simple as that. They assigned us to the explosives unit, 3rd Division, road sweeps, convoy protection, search detail. Dangerous work. But it wasn't the risk that got to me. It was the silence before the boom. That eerie hum in the dirt, when something metal hid where metal shouldn't be. Tommy taught me to listen. Not just with my ears, but with my whole self. Feel the shift in air, the way a crow won't land near a certain spot, the stutter in a squirrel's dash. Nature knew things, and I learned to know it too. One morning, real early, we were patrolling a dusty road outside El Centro. Nothing but heat haze and tire tracks. I picked up a scent, faint but sharp, like burnt batteries wrapped in sweat. I froze. My ears turned first, then my shoulders. Tommy saw me stiffen, hand instantly on my harness. He didn't say a word, didn't need to. I crept forward, nose to ground, inch by inch. Found it buried under a mound of sand. The pressure plate was old, rusted, but the charge was still live, enough to flip the whole convoy behind us. Tommy knelt beside me, eyes scanning. "Good boy," he whispered. And that was it. No high fives, no cheer, just his hand on my neck, firm and warm. That was the moment I knew what partner meant. It wasn't just about jobs or missions. It meant trust so absolute you'd put your life in paws or hands without blinking. Later that night, while the others joked around a burn barrel, Tommy sat beside me and pulled something from his pack. A photo. "That's my little sister Jess," he said, showing me a girl with bright braces and big eyes holding a science trophy. "She's got Down syndrome. Smartest one in the family, if you ask me. Doesn't say much. But when she looks at you, you just feel seen." He paused, running his thumb across the picture. "I promised her I'd come back." I pressed my head to his knee, didn't move, just listened. He didn't say it out loud, but I heard it. Help me keep that promise. And I took that oath in my bones. There were good days, too, not just dust and danger. Days when we trained in grassy fields, the smell of hose water and sweat filling the air. Days when Tommy snuck me scraps from the mess hall. Chicken bits and sometimes, if I was lucky, peanut butter crackers. He'd toss one my way and smirk, tell no one. I never did. The other handlers began calling me the Shadow. I was always there, just a few steps behind Tommy. In debriefings, I sat quietly at his feet. In downtime, I waited by his bunk. Even in sleep, I listened for his breath. He talked to me like I understood every word. Not baby talk. Real words. Real thoughts. "You know, Rex," he said once, lying in the grass with the sun on his face, "sometimes I wonder if I'll ever fit back into normal life. Grocery lines, bills, dinner talk." He turned his head to look at me. "But then I remember, I've got you, and maybe that's enough normal for me." I wagged once. That was all he needed. There was one night, moonless, quiet, when the base was on lockdown. Rumors of insurgent infiltration. Tension hung so thick you could taste it. Tommy didn't sleep. Neither did I. Around 3 a.m., he knelt beside me, whispering, "If anything happens, you run. Don't you dare come back for me." I growled, soft but certain. He smiled. "Figures." That was the thing about love between soldiers, whether two-legged or four. It didn't need grand gestures. It lived in the unspoken. The glances, the way we leaned toward each other in stillness. But I saw what he hid from the others. The way his hands trembled after missions. The way he stared too long at the wall sometimes, eyes not really seeing. And when the letters came, those thin white envelopes with army postmarks, his shoulders tensed just a little more. One evening, I saw him tear one open. He read it fast, too fast, then folded it, stuffed it deep in his rucksack, and walked out. I followed, as always. He sat by the fence, overlooking the flight line, staring at the horizon. Didn't speak for a long time. When he finally did, his voice cracked. "Jess died." My ears twitched. Seizure. In her sleep. Mom said she looked peaceful. I didn't get to say goodbye. He bent forward, resting his forehead on mine. "I don't know who I'm doing this for anymore, Rex." I didn't know what to do, except stay. Keep breathing. Keep close. Sometimes that's all you can offer someone falling apart. Your presence. Your silence. Eventually he stood, shoulders squarer, eyes harder. "Guess I'm doing it for you now," he said. I barked once, not loud, just enough. From that night on, he never skipped a drill, never skipped a patrol. He pushed harder, stayed up later. Some called it dedication. I knew better. He was trying to outrun the grief. But grief has teeth, and it catches up to everyone eventually. Still, through it all, he called me one thing. Not boy, not dog. Partner. Like we were equals. Like I had value. That word, it built a home in my chest. And long before I ever knew what it meant to lose him, I knew what it meant to belong to him. That was the beginning of something neither of us could name, but both of us carried deep. And someday, when the world began to tear itself apart, I'd hold on to that word like a lifeline. Because when everything else failed, partner was all I had left. Some people say dogs don't remember smells the way people remember faces. That's not true. There are scents burned into me so deep, they rise from the floorboards of my dreams. And the first one was blood and diesel. I can still smell it now. We'd been in country about 3 weeks, just long enough for everything to stop feeling like training and start feeling like something else. The air in Kandahar was dry and mean, filled with dust that coated your throat like ash. The base was a mess of tents and barricades, sandbags piled against everything like they were trying to hold back something invisible. Tommy kept his head down most of the time. He didn't joke around like the other guys. He read reports, checked maps, repacked my harness 3 times a day, making sure everything was just right. Our first real op was a sweep outside of Maiwand, a stretch of pockmarked road the locals called the Boneyard. Too many patrols had gone silent out there. They sent us in with a convoy of 3 Humvees and 1 MRAP, 12 men total, plus me. Tommy didn't talk much that morning. Neither did I. He just clipped my vest on, tightened the chest strap, and ran his hand down my spine real slow. "You ready?" he asked, kneeling to meet my eyes. I looked at him. I was always ready. The ride out was rough, but quiet. Men cracked knuckles, adjusted scopes, sipped coffee like it might be their last. I sat at Tommy's feet in the back, ears twitching at every creak and jolt of the vehicle. Outside the armored windows, the world rolled by in shades of beige and ruin. We dismounted around 0600. A heat haze already shimmered off the sand. I caught the faint smell of goats, copper, something sour from a ditch. We began the walk. My job was to lead, nose low, every step deliberate. Tommy trailed just behind, rifle slung, eyes scanning. The other guys fanned out in a staggered line. 20 minutes in, I caught it. Metal, battery acid, motor oil, mixed with urine. Old sweat, improvised death. I froze. My front paw hovered mid-step. I turned my head slowly. Tommy saw me. He didn't speak, just tapped his hand twice. Low signal. I sniffed again, edged left. There it was, half buried under a rock pile, wires peeking like veins from the dirt. IED. Tommy raised his hand, called it in calm. The squad held position. The EOD boys were an hour out. We backed off, marked the spot, kept walking. That was the first one. We found 2 more that day. 1 live, 1 already triggered. Shrapnel still clung to a twisted frame, black soot marking the edge of a broken life. The sun beat down hard. My tongue lolled, chest heaving. Tommy gave me water from his own canteen, his palm cupped for me to drink. "Good boy," he whispered, rubbing behind my ear. We got back to base that night without a scratch. The guys patted Tommy's back, tossed me beef jerky from their MREs. "Lucky charm, this one," they said. I wasn't lucky. I was working. The next day, the luck ran out. It was supposed to be routine. Return to the same area, clear the opposite path. Standard procedure. Same crew, same layout. But the ground had changed overnight. I knew it the moment I stepped off the MRAP. The dirt was wrong. Too smooth. Too perfect. I tugged hard on the lead. Whined low. Tommy looked at me, concern creeping into his brow. "You smell it?" I barked once. Short, sharp. He raised his hand. We halted, but it was too late. The blast came from behind. Not the path ahead. Behind. The second Humvee lifted off the ground, wheels spinning in the air like a kicked beetle. It landed twisted and split, black smoke pouring from its belly. Fire bloomed like a cruel flower. Screams followed, and silence. I bolted before Tommy could stop me. The heat hit like a wall, blistering my nose. I found Sergeant Mac McKinney slumped against the doorframe, his leg gone from the knee down. His eyes were wide, not with pain, but disbelief, like he couldn't believe the sky was still blue. Tommy pulled me back. I didn't want to leave Mac, but there was more. 2 others still inside. Fire licking at their boots. Tommy didn't hesitate. He dropped his rifle, ripped open the side door, and dragged Private Jennings out first. Burned, coughing, alive. The second man didn't make it. Corporal Ramirez, 21. Played guitar. Taught me how to shake with a snap of his fingers. They covered him with a tarp. Back at base, everything was too quiet. Tommy sat in the barracks, staring at the wall. His shirt soaked through, arms scraped raw. I lay beside him, resting my head on his foot. He finally spoke after an hour. We were too slow. I let out a low huff. "No, don't you take this on," he said, looking down at me. "You did your part. You warned us. I should have listened harder." He knelt and pressed his forehead to mine. "I'm sorry, Rex." His voice cracked on my name. That night, I had my first nightmare. I saw the fire again, heard the pop and scream of the blast, smelled that sickening mix of cooked flesh and gasoline. I woke up howling. Tommy held me until my chest stopped shaking. After that, things changed. I wasn't scared exactly, but I was. Changed. More alert. More serious. I didn't chase tennis balls on breaks. I didn't sleep through thunder. I started watching everyone. Watching the sky. Watching the dirt. Tommy did too. He kept a journal after that. Tiny black notebook, always in his pocket. He'd write in it at odd hours. I'd sit at the foot of his bed, listening to the scratch of his pen, wondering what words he used to hold the weight we both carried. Some days, he spoke less, smiled less. But when he looked at me, it was still there. The connection, the shared burden, the silent agreement. We keep each other alive. And we did. For weeks. Until one day, he didn't come back from a mission. And the silence that followed was louder than any explosion I'd ever heard. There's a certain sound a soldier's boot makes when it doesn't come back. It's not the silence that gets you. It's the echo that never arrives. The half-second where your ears wait for a step, for a breath, for that steady thump of someone alive. And there's just nothing. I still remember the morning they zipped him up. It was early, cold. The kind of cold that cuts even through Kevlar and fur. We were stationed in a forward outpost near Lashkar Gah, rotating between security patrols and sweeps. Tommy had been quieter than usual, more intense. His eyes had that faraway look again, the one that said he was thinking about something too heavy for words. That morning, the CO called a team out to check a compound flagged in a drone flyover, something about suspicious foot traffic. Tommy looked at me as he pulled on his vest. "You're staying behind, Rex," he said gently. I barked, confused. "It's just recon, buddy. No dogs needed. I'll be back in a few hours. Don't start a revolution while I'm gone." He scratched behind my ears, kissed the top of my head, and he walked out. I never saw him alive again. The explosion hit at 11:14 a.m. I remember the exact time because I was lying in the shade of a fuel drum when the blast rolled across the base like thunder cracking open the sky. Dust rained from the rafters. Radios lit up like Christmas. Men shouting, boots pounding, sirens wailing. I knew before anyone said a word. I tore out of that tent like my soul was on fire. 2 Marines tried to grab my harness, but I slipped them. I ran toward the gate, toward the smoke, toward the place where my partner had vanished. They stopped me at the checkpoint, held me, shackled me. I howled, fought. My claws scraped the concrete. My throat tore from barking. But Tommy wasn't coming back. They didn't tell me that, of course. Not right away. They just stopped looking me in the eye. He was the only one not accounted for. The others came back, bloodied, burned, but breathing. Tommy's vest was found 20 feet from the crater. His tag, 1 boot, that's all. For days, they said maybe he was captured. Maybe he'd made it out and was in hiding. They gave the family hope. But I knew. I stopped eating. Didn't sleep. Just stared at the flap of the tent door, waiting. Every shadow, every cough outside, I'd jerk up, ears high. Nothing. On the 4th day, a chopper came. A black bag was unloaded. I didn't need to sniff it. I knew. They tried to hide it from me. Moved me to the rear quarters. But I slipped out again. Dug under the fencing. Found the storage tent where they'd placed him. I lay beside that bag for hours. Didn't move, didn't whimper. Just pressed my side to his and breathed with him one last time. The medics found me there. Their eyes were red. "Damn dog won't leave him," one said, voice cracking. "I wouldn't either," said the other. When they folded the flag over his coffin, I sat in front of it, watched every corner crease, every pin they placed. I didn't blink. I wasn't crying. Dogs don't cry. But my chest felt hollow, like someone had taken the whole world out of it and left nothing but the echo of a name I couldn't say. They flew us home together. Me in a crate beneath, him in the belly of the plane, draped in the stars he earned. At the airfield, I wasn't allowed at the ceremony. Regulations, they said. Too disruptive. Too unpredictable. But Ellie, Tommy's wife, she raised hell. "You're not burying him without Rex." They relented. That's how I ended up standing next to her and little Maddie on the green grass of the Cedarville Cemetery. Rows of folding chairs, men in dark uniforms with white gloves, bugles ready. I didn't understand the music, but I understood the tone. Final. The chaplain spoke of sacrifice, of duty, of honor. No one mentioned how Tommy liked burnt toast and black coffee, how he hummed old Springsteen songs when he thought no one was listening, how he once carried a wounded puppy 3 miles back to base just because its cry sounded like Jess's. No one talked about how he used to whisper to me on long rides, secrets he didn't dare say to anyone else. I knew those things, and now I was the only one who did. At the end, they handed Ellie the flag. Folded triangle, heavy with things unsaid. Maddie reached up and touched my ear. I didn't flinch. She leaned in, whispered something. "He told me to take care of you." I licked her hand. It was the only promise I knew how to make anymore. That night, I curled up on the porch of their house, beside his boots, still muddy, still untied, waiting like he might slip back into them. And I waited too. I waited for weeks. Even now, when the wind's just right, and I catch a hint of sand or motor oil or burnt toast, my ears perk, my chest stirs. But it's never him. It'll never be him again. And the world that had once made sense, commands, missions, purpose, it all cracked wide open. I wasn't just a soldier without a war. I was a soul without its twin. And no medal, no praise, no polished plaque could change that. I was loyal. And now, there was no one left to be loyal to. It's strange. The first time you hear a door creak instead of a rifle bolt. The silence of peacetime can be deafening for a creature like me. No checklists, no mission briefings. No scent of adrenaline on the air. Just grass. Mailboxes. The quiet hum of a refrigerator down the hall. After Tommy died, they didn't know what to do with me. Technically, I was property of the military. But nobody wanted to keep a dog with scars on his muzzle and the look of war in his eyes. Most folks like their pets soft around the edges. I was all bone and tension, a shadow waiting for an order that would never come. They offered me a plaque, a medal. Some handlers saluted me like I understood, but none of that mattered. I wanted Tommy. It was Ellie who spoke up. He's not going to some shelter. He's coming home. There was resistance, bureaucracy, paperwork, but eventually she wore them down. Tommy had named me next of kin on a training form. A joke, I think, but it stuck. And so they released me. They flew me to Cedarville on a small plane. I didn't pace. I didn't whine. I just watched the world through the vent holes in the crate, the clouds slipping past like ghosts. When the hatch opened, she was there. Ellie. Hair tucked back in a loose braid. Sunglasses hiding eyes I remembered from the funeral. Red-rimmed, quiet, strong. And next to her, holding a crayon drawing in one hand and a leash in the other, stood Maddie, 9 years old, wearing overalls and muddy sneakers. Her voice was soft when she said my name. Rex. I stepped forward, slow, sniffed her hand. She didn't flinch, didn't pull away. She just whispered, "It's okay. You're safe now." Safe. Funny word. I followed them home in the back seat of an old pickup that smelled like vanilla and hay. The roads were smooth, the trees tall, the air clean in a way the desert never was. But I couldn't settle. I kept checking the window, the mirrors, waiting for a checkpoint, a convoy, anything familiar. None came. The house was small, blue siding, porch swing, wind chimes. Inside, there was a fireplace with old photos on the mantel. Tommy was in some of them, younger, smiling, holding Maddie as a baby. One photo had me too. On our first leave, I'd sat beside him in front of a battered Jeep. We both looked younger, lighter. I didn't recognize that dog. They gave me a bed in the corner of the living room. Big, soft, too soft. It swallowed me. I slept on the hardwood instead, near the front door, like I was guarding something. Old habits. Maddie tried to play with me that first week. She'd roll tennis balls across the floor. I wouldn't chase them. She'd wrap string cheese in her lunch and slide me pieces under the table. I let it sit there. One evening she sat cross-legged beside me with her little sketch pad and said, "Do you remember Daddy's voice?" I raised my head. She didn't wait for an answer. "I do. He used to sing when he thought I was asleep." Her voice trembled. "So if you forget, I can sing for both of us, okay?" Then she did. A lullaby. Off-key, sweet, cracked by tears. I laid my head in her lap. That was the first night I didn't dream of fire. Ellie tried her best too. She talked to me like I was family. Never baby talked. Never forced affection. "I know I'm not him," she said once, crouching beside me on the porch. "But I loved him. And if he loved you, then I will too." She smelled like lavender and grief. I rested my chin on her knee. The town knew who I was, or thought they did. "That's Tommy's war dog," they'd say at the post office. "Hero dog." They wrote about me in the local paper, said I sniffed out bombs, saved lives, barked when bullets flew. None of them asked how it felt to come home without the one person you were trained to follow into hell. None of them knew that at night I walked the perimeter of the backyard over and over, waiting for an enemy that never came. One afternoon, I startled when the microwave dinged. Another time, I growled at a jogger with a headlamp. It wasn't aggression, it was memory. Sometimes I'd walk into the garage, just to smell his boots. They still sat by the shelf, caked in Afghan dust, untouched. Maddie caught me once. She didn't say anything, just sat down beside me. "He told me once," she whispered, "that you don't leave your partner behind." I pressed my nose to the leather. She nodded. "That's why you're still here." Ellie started taking me with her to the station sometimes. She was interim chief now, had been for a while. Folks looked up to her. I didn't understand everything that passed between the uniforms, but I could tell she was carrying more than her share. Some officers smiled at me, some avoided my eyes. Only one ever reached for me without hesitation. Detective Carson. Big guy, quiet, smelled like pine soap and peppermint. He didn't pet me right away. He just looked at me and said, "You miss him, don't you?" I blinked once. He nodded. "Me too." After that, I followed him around the station, not out of habit, out of choice. Maybe I was starting to learn how to trust again. Maybe. But even as I walked those halls, sat through briefings I didn't understand, and watched Maddie paint my picture with wild yellow streaks for fur, there was a part of me still waiting at that crater, still listening for boots that would never return. Because being loved like a pet is different than being bonded in battle. And while the world tried to make me soft, I still had war in my bones. You can smell death before it arrives. Most humans don't realize that. They think it comes with sirens, or alarms, or men shouting into radios. But death, it's quieter than that, slower. It settles into a house like fog in the valley. You can't see it, not right away, but you feel it curling under doors, slipping through vents. And that night, I felt it. It started with the stillness, not the peaceful kind, the wrong kind. The kind where even the refrigerator hum seems too loud, where the ticking of a wall clock stings your ears. It was just past 9:00 p.m. Ellie had gone out to pick up groceries. Just a quick trip, she said. Maddie was at a sleepover 2 houses down, her backpack full of stuffed animals and bedtime snacks. That left me alone in the house with Sam. Sam Cooper, chief of police. He wasn't like Tommy, not really. Tommy had been young, quick, with a laugh he never quite believed in. Sam was older, solid, the kind of man people went to when they didn't know where else to turn. And even though I still struggled with the word home, something about Sam made my tail settle when he walked into a room. He didn't try to replace Tommy, didn't talk to me like I was a thing to fix or soften. He respected the silence. Sometimes that's more than enough. He'd had a long day, double shift, investigation into a missing boy, city council meetings. I could smell fatigue on him as soon as he walked in the door. He dropped his badge on the table, kicked off his boots, and poured a glass of iced tea with that same slow, deliberate rhythm he did everything with. Then he sank into the recliner by the front window, remote in hand. I lay by his feet, always within reach. At some point, I must have dozed off, But something pulled me up. A shift in scent. Faint at first. Metallic. Wrong. I sat up, ears turning toward him. He wasn't moving, not blinking, not breathing. I rose to all fours, padded closer, nudged his leg with my nose. Nothing. I growled low. No response. I licked his hand. Still nothing. That's when I lost it. I barked once. Sharp, panicked. Then again. I jumped up onto the recliner, nudging his chest with my paws, trying to wake him. The TV buzzed softly in the background. "Come on, Sam," I barked. "Come on." I didn't stop. I ran to the front door, barked at the silence outside, then sprinted back to him over and over, until finally, headlights splashed across the front window. Ellie. She opened the door, bags in her arms, and froze when she saw me standing on Sam's chest, barking like a mad thing. "Rex?" she said slowly. "What?" Then she dropped the groceries. She ran. I moved aside, just enough to let her reach him. I could hear her breath catch, the sound of her knuckles slapping his face lightly. Sammy, wake up, baby, please." She called 911 with trembling fingers. I listened to her voice crack as she gave the address, begged them to hurry, said words like unresponsive and not breathing. I sat there the whole time, my tail still, my heart thudding like a war drum in my chest. Paramedics arrived. Fast. Too fast, and still too slow. They brought machines. Wires. They said things I didn't understand, and a few I did. No pulse, possible cardiac event, time of collapse unknown. They lifted him onto a stretcher. Ellie rode with them. I wasn't allowed. I barked at the ambulance as it pulled away, as if sound alone could stop death from completing what it came to do. Later that night, Detective Carson showed up at the house. His face was pale when he came inside. He looked around, like the room had betrayed him. I walked to him, tail low, head bowed. He knelt and scratched behind my ears. "I heard what you did," he said quietly. "You tried." That word, tried, landed like a weight on my chest. I hadn't succeeded. I hadn't saved him. The house stayed too quiet after that. Ellie didn't come back that night. Maddie's sleepover became an overnight stay. I lay in front of Sam's chair, nose pressed against the fabric where his scent still lingered. The next morning, Ellie returned. Her eyes were swollen, her hands shaking. "He's gone," she told the empty room. She didn't say it to me, but I heard it. I walked to her, rested my head against her thigh. She crumpled onto the kitchen floor, holding on to me like I was the last thread left in her world. And maybe I was. For the next 2 days, everything moved like slow motion. Visitors. Food in containers no one touched. Hushed voices. The smell of flowers and grief. Carson stopped by again. Stayed longer this time. He looked tired, too. We sat together on the porch. He stared out at the street, but he wasn't seeing it. "I don't get it," he muttered. "Sam had a clean bill of health last month. Ran 5 miles every morning. No signs. Nothing." I growled low. He looked down at me. "You don't think it was natural, do you?" I didn't respond. I just kept my gaze fixed on the driveway, waiting. That night, I snuck into the closet and found Sam's uniform jacket, curled up with it, buried my nose deep in the collar, and there it was again. And that smell, wrong, faint, but familiar, like old rubber and metal, like something that didn't belong. I barked once into the dark. No one heard. But I knew what I knew. Sam Cooper wasn't taken by God. He was taken by someone who didn't want him to talk. And I, just a dog with no words, no badge, no voice, was the only witness. So I did the only thing I knew how to do. I waited. And when they brought the coffin into the funeral home 2 days later, I didn't sit quietly like the rest. I barked and barked and barked. They dressed him in full blues. Sam's formal uniform, the one he wore for ceremonies, graduations, parades, where the whole town clapped for something they didn't quite understand. Clean lines, sharp creases, medals polished until they caught the light like stars. But he wasn't supposed to wear it like that. Not laying down. Not behind glass. The funeral home was a stone building on the edge of Cedarville, just past the high school football field and the old donut shop. It smelled like lilies and lemon polish and fear. Ellie arrived first, in black. Maddie, in a dress that didn't fit quite right. She clutched a stuffed lion in one arm, the kind that still had a price tag stitched to the back leg. I followed behind them, on a leash held by our neighbor, Mrs. Talbot. Ellie's hands were shaking too much that morning. I tried to stay calm, tried to be quiet. I made it through the front door, past the ushers, past the photo board with pictures of Sam holding babies, shaking hands, standing in front of the 4th of July fireworks 3 years ago. But then I saw the coffin. Dark wood. Mahogany, I think they called it. Gleaming. Centered beneath an arch of white roses. 2 honor guards stood beside it like statues. The air hummed with whispering, but all I could hear was my own breath. Fast. Too fast. And the smell. That smell again. Not rot, not death, chemicals, wrong. I pulled forward, nose twitching, chest tight. "Easy, Rex," Mrs. Talbot whispered. Easy now. But it wasn't easy. Nothing about it was. Sam was in there. I could feel it. And he wasn't resting. I began to bark. One, sharp and clear. The kind that echoes. Heads turned. People murmured. I barked again, louder. Mrs. Talbot tugged the leash. "Hush," she pleaded. "This isn't the place." But she didn't understand. Something was wrong. I lunged. The leash snapped from her hand, and I ran. Claws clicking against the tile, scattering flower petals underfoot. I jumped onto the raised platform, paws landing hard against the side of the coffin. The force knocked one of the arrangements over. A vase shattered. Gasps rippled across the chapel like wind through wheat. I howled. Not like a dog mourning, like a warning, like a siren. 2 officers rushed forward. "Get that dog!" someone shouted. "No!" Ellie cried. "Wait! He's trying to tell us something!" But it was too late. Deputy Chief Walter Briggs grabbed my collar, yanked hard. Another officer pulled at my hindquarters. I twisted, snarled, didn't bite, just resisted. I didn't want to hurt anyone. I just wanted them to open the damn box. "Out!" Briggs barked. "Now!" I was dragged, legs scraping the floor, tail low and wild, heart screaming in my chest. They shut the chapel doors behind me. I could still hear the organ playing. Inside, people were pretending nothing had happened. Outside, I paced, sniffed the ground, barked again. Mrs. Talbot tried to soothe me, gave up, tied me to a post under the portico. I waited. Carson came out a few minutes later. He crouched beside me. His eyes were troubled. "You saw something, didn't you?" he whispered. I licked his wrist. He untied me. "Let's take a walk." We circled around to the back, through the side lot, into the staff entrance. No one stopped us. Carson had his badge. His voice was quiet but firm. He talked to one of the funeral directors, a nervous man with shiny shoes and a quivering voice. "I need to check the body," Carson said. "Sir, that's not—" I said, "I need to check." The man looked at me, at Carson, at the badge. Then he opened the door. Inside, the casket stood untouched. I bolted toward it. This time, Carson didn't stop me. He followed. "Easy, boy," he said, but not like he meant for me to slow down. More like he was saying it to himself. He ran his hand along the lid. "You think he's still in there?" I barked. Not loud, just once. Carson nodded. "Let's open it." The director hesitated, but Mrs. Cooper said, "I'll take full responsibility." They undid the latches. The lid creaked. And there he was, Sam, face pale, lips pressed tight, hands folded. But something was off. Too still. Too frozen. Carson reached down, touched his neck, then froze. After a moment, he leaned closer. His hand pressed gently under Sam's jaw. His breath caught. Then he turned to the director. "Call an ambulance." The man blinked. "What?" "He's alive." A silence settled over the room, the kind that comes just before a flood. "Do it!" Carson shouted. The next 10 minutes blurred into panic and motion. Paramedics, stretchers, oxygen masks. I barked the whole time, not warning now, but pushing, begging them to move faster. They said it was impossible. Said his pulse was shallow but real. Said he must have been dosed with something that mimicked death. Said he should have been buried that morning, buried alive. And it would have happened if I hadn't barked. They all said I was a hero, but I didn't feel like one. I felt like I'd almost failed. I lay at the foot of his hospital bed that night, listening to machines beep in rhythm with the breath I almost lost forever. Carson sat beside me, sipping cold coffee, eyes red. He looked at me like he was seeing a ghost. "You knew," he said. I rested my head on my paws, and this time I stayed quiet, because finally someone had listened. The thing about scent is, it lingers. It hides in places people don't think to look. Beneath collars, inside carpet seams, in the folds of a uniform someone wears just long enough to say goodbye. And once you know a scent, really know it, it's like a fingerprint pressed onto your memory. I knew the scent that clung to Sam that night. It wasn't fear. It wasn't illness. It was something man-made, chemical, precise, designed to silence the body but not kill it, not right away. And I'd smelled it before. In the garage, in the laundry room, on the cuffs of suits that weren't worn by strangers. The hospital kept Sam under observation, monitors blinking, machines sighing beside his bed like tired ghosts. Doctors called it a miracle, said they'd never seen anything like it. "A metabolic suppression agent," one of them mumbled, scribbling notes on a chart. Deliberate, sophisticated. I didn't need science to know what I already knew. Someone tried to erase him. Carson never left the hospital that first night. Neither did I. We took shifts. Him in a chair near the window, me curled at Sam's feet, always alert. Ellie came in the next morning. Her hair was pulled back tight, eyes raw and sleepless. She stood by the bed a long time before saying anything. Then, barely above a whisper, "I almost buried him." Her voice cracked. I almost put him in the ground, Rex. I nuzzled her hand. She didn't pull away. She gripped my face like I was the last solid thing in a world slipping through her fingers. Maddie wasn't allowed in the ICU. Too young. Too much risk. But she sent pictures. One was of Sam and me, drawn with crayon. She'd given us both capes. The next evening, something changed. A visitor arrived. Tall, dark coat. Moved like someone who didn't belong but knew how to pretend he did. Said his name was James Denton. Claimed to be a friend of Sam's from out of town. Carson met him at the nurse's station. "You're not on the visitor list," Carson said flatly. Denton smiled, that slow, deliberate kind of smile. "I was told Chief Cooper regained consciousness. I just wanted to offer my respects." Carson's eyes narrowed. "He hasn't. Yet. And we're not allowing unscheduled guests." Denton nodded. "Of course. I understand." But as he turned to leave, he looked at me. Not the way most people look at dogs. Not curious. Not cautious. He looked at me like he recognized me. And worse, like he expected me to recognize him. And I did. Not his face. His scent. It was the same one from the coffin. From Sam's skin. From the edges of his dress blues. I growled low in my throat. Denton hesitated. Just for a second. Then he turned and disappeared down the hall. Carson knelt beside me. "You know him?" I didn't move. He placed a hand on my back. Me too. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every sound set me off. Footsteps, vents, machines powering on and off. I paced the room, tail stiff, head low. Around 2 a.m., the lights flickered. Once, twice, then went dark. Emergency backup kicked in. Dim amber glow, just enough to see shapes. Carson stood up fast, hand going to his holster. "Something's wrong." I positioned myself at the foot of the bed. Low growl. Then the door creaked, and Denton stepped inside. This time, he wasn't smiling. He had gloves, a mask, and a syringe. He froze when he saw us. Carson's weapon was already drawn. "Drop it," he barked. Denton moved. Fast, but not fast enough. I lunged, clamped down on his arm, teeth sinking through fabric into flesh. He screamed. The syringe clattered to the floor. We hit the ground hard, my jaws locked tight. I didn't let go. Not even when he slammed me into the wall. Not when he drove his knee into my ribs, because I had one job, protect Sam. Carson tackled him from behind. They crashed into the tray table, sending wires and charts flying. More noise outside. Voices. Running. By the time backup arrived, Denton was on the ground, bleeding, eyes wild. "Who sent you?" Carson demanded. Denton smiled again, even through the pain. "You already know." Later, in the holding room, he gave them a name. Walter Briggs, Deputy Chief of Police. The same man who dragged me out of the chapel. The same man who said Sam was a hero and then tried to bury him alive. It wasn't just betrayal, it was strategy, and it went deeper than any of us could have guessed. Carson and I sat in the hospital hallway afterward, everything too bright, too quiet. "They planned this," he said, voice flat. "Every inch of it." I laid my head on his boot. He didn't move it. They knew Sam was onto something, and they knew he'd never stop. He looked at me. "But neither will we." A few hours later, Sam opened his eyes, weak, slow, but aware. I stepped forward, tail still, body trembling. He looked at me for a long time. Then he whispered, hoarse and cracked. "Hey, partner." And I knew. He remembered. He was still him, and we weren't done yet. Not even close. They say when a dog bites, he doesn't think. They're wrong. When I bite, I think about everything. About why I'm biting. About what I'm protecting. About the line I've drawn between right and wrong, and who I'm willing to cross it for. That night, I crossed it for Sam. And I didn't let go. But it didn't end there. After Denton's arrest, after the syringe was bagged and the lights in the ICU flickered back to normal, we thought maybe, just maybe, it was over. But nothing ends that neatly, because rats don't scurry unless something bigger is chasing them. And Denton, he wasn't the end of the trail. He was just a scent on the wind. Carson stayed close to Sam's bedside after that. So did I. The three of us were like an old unit hunkered down in a war zone, waiting for the next whistle in the dark. Sam couldn't speak much, but he was watching, listening. His fingers twitched when Maddie brought him drawings. His eyes tracked Carson's badge when he laid it on the windowsill each night. And when he finally whispered, "It's not just Briggs," we all knew we weren't anywhere near safe. Carson moved fast. Too fast for his own good. He started digging. Through Sam's old case files, through funeral home security footage, through Denton's call logs and financial records, every lead cracked open another. Every answer raised two more questions. And at the center of it all was Operation Seabright. I didn't understand what it meant at the time, but I knew the weight it carried when Carson muttered it under his breath and slammed the report binder shut with shaking hands. "It's a cleanup," he said. "That's what this all is." Sam nodded, just barely. "A cover job, system-wide. Briggs wasn't working alone. Denton either. Someone high up wanted Sam quiet because he was getting too close to something no one in Cedarville, or maybe the whole damn county, was supposed to know. But it wasn't just knowledge that got him targeted. It was loyalty. Because Sam still believed the badge meant something, and someone else didn't. The hospital agreed to move him into a secure wing, under police guard. Cameras, clearance, a fortress for a man recovering from a chemical near death. But security is only good if you can trust the people wearing the uniforms. And that was our mistake. It happened on a Thursday. Quiet day, overcast. I'd been lying on the tile near Sam's bed for hours, drifting between dreams of desert wind and memories of Tommy's voice calling my name. Carson had stepped out to take a call. Ellie was at home, finally resting. Only Maddie was nearby, down the hall in the family lounge, coloring with crayons that always smelled like wax and warmth. I sensed it first. Not sound, not sight, smell, cologne, too strong. Beneath it, gun oil, leather, and that same chemical trace I'd learned to fear. I stood. My ears went up, tail stiff, nose low. Footsteps approached. Two men in scrubs entered the room, faces hidden behind surgical masks. One carried a chart, the other wheeled in a tray. Nothing about them said kindness. They weren't here to help. They were here to finish the job. The one in front reached for Sam's IV line. I lunged. He saw me too late. My teeth sank into his forearm, a blur of rage and instinct. He screamed, dropping the chart, flailing. The second man pulled a baton from his coat. Not a syringe, not a sedative, a weapon. He swung hard. Pain exploded behind my ribs. I yelped, but didn't fall. He swung again, this time across my shoulder. I faltered. But I didn't let go. The first man kicked me square in the stomach. I crashed against the wall, air knocked from my lungs, vision spinning. Still, I rose. I staggered to my paws. I bared my teeth, and I growled, because Sam was still breathing. And as long as he was breathing, I wasn't quitting, ever. The third blow knocked me off my feet. Then came the fourth. Somewhere in the haze, I heard shouting, boots pounding down the hall.
Carson's voice, sharp and broken. "Don't you touch him." Gunfire, 2 shots, glass shattering, screams, silence. When I opened my eyes again, I was lying on the floor. Blood matted the fur behind my ear. My left leg wouldn't move. Carson was kneeling over me, hands shaking, pressing gauze somewhere near my ribs. "Hang on, Rex," he whispered. "You did good. You did so damn good." I turned my head toward the bed. Sam was still there, alive, eyes wide, breath shallow, but he was watching me, and I swear, he smiled.
Later, I was wheeled into a veterinary trauma room across town. Bright lights, cold tables. I drifted in and out, while voices spoke in clipped, urgent tones. "He's got 3 broken ribs. Possible concussion. Blood in the lungs." I didn't care. All I wanted was to get back to that hospital, back to Sam, back to my post. But they sedated me, made the world go soft and dark. I dreamed of Tommy, of fields we never walked, of open skies we never came home under. And through it all, I kept hearing one thing: you don't leave your partner behind. When I woke up, Carson was sitting beside me, bandaged, bruised, but smiling. "You're one tough old bastard," he said. I blinked slowly. He leaned in. "We got the guy who sent them." His smile faded. "It was Briggs, but it goes further." I didn't move, didn't need to. I could smell it already. The rot, the lie. The next threat, just beyond the curtain of peace they were trying to pull back down over our heads. We weren't safe yet, not even close, but I was still here, still breathing, still biting. And until my last rib cracked and my last tooth dulled, I'd keep fighting for the people who hadn't given up on me. Because that's what partners do. I was supposed to stay down. That's what the vet said, at least. Rest. Recover. Let the bones set and the lungs clear. She was gentle about it. Tried to speak softly, even when I refused the food tray or snapped my head toward every creak in the hallway. But I didn't want recovery. I wanted Sam. They kept me in a small animal hospital across town. Nice place. Warm lights, calming music, posters with smiling golden retrievers, and promises of healing touch. But no matter how soft the blankets were, I felt cold. No matter how many kind hands tried to reassure me, I didn't relax. Because something in me said he needed me still, and I wasn't there. 2 days passed. I lay on my side, staring at the door. I barely ate, barely drank. And they tried to move me to the recovery wing, but I growled when they opened the cage. On the 3rd day, just after sunrise, the door creaked open, and I smelled something familiar. Pine soap, leather, gunpowder. Carson. He knelt beside me, his arm in a sling, one cheek still bruised from the scuffle at the hospital. "You look like hell," he whispered. I wagged my tail once, weak, but enough. He smirked. "Yeah, me too." He slid a folded flannel blanket under my head. "He's still breathing, Rex. He's still with us." I let out a low sound, part relief, part longing. "I pulled some strings," he added, his voice a little quieter. "I'm not supposed to, but hell, you've earned it." He lifted me, slow, careful, and laid me on a padded stretcher. Next thing I knew, we were in the back of his cruiser, the same one Sam used to drive. The seats still smelled like stale coffee and old leather. As the car rolled through Cedarville, I watched the town go by. Quiet porches, mailboxes with flags up, people walking dogs that didn't know a thing about bullets or betrayal. When we pulled up to the hospital, I could already feel the tension.
Two patrol cars parked out front, a nurse arguing with security. Carson flashed his badge. "He's with me." The nurse narrowed her eyes. "You can't bring an injured animal into the ICU." "He's not an animal," Carson said. "He's family." She stared at him a beat longer, then stepped aside. We took the service elevator up. I couldn't stand fully, so I lay there, watching the numbers tick past. 3rd floor, 4th, 5th, then the chime. The hallway was colder than I remembered, the lights harsher. Everything smelled like bleach and hope hanging by a thread. When the doors opened to Sam's floor, I raised my head. I could smell him, faint but present, alive. Carson wheeled me slowly to the observation window outside room 512. And there he was, pale, still, tubes running into his arms, machines blinking steady green pulses beside him, but his chest, it rose and fell and rose again. He was breathing. I let out a soft whine. Carson placed a hand on my neck. He made it through the night. Barely. There was a moment when they thought he didn't finish. I didn't need him to. We watched for a long time. The beeping, the movement, nurses coming and going, adjusting, recording, whispering. Then his hand moved, barely a twitch, but I saw it. I barked, just once. Sam's eyes fluttered. The nurse rushed in. Moments later, Ellie was there. Then Maddie. The whole room seemed to swell with breath again, like no one had dared inhale until that exact moment. They let me in. They bent the rules. I limped to the foot of his bed, my ribs screaming, my legs shaking. But I made it. I rested my chin on the mattress edge. His hand slid toward me, shaky, slow. Fingers brushed my ear. He tried to speak. His throat cracked, barely a sound. But I knew what he said. "Good boy." And for the first time in what felt like years, I closed my eyes and let myself breathe. Outside, Carson spoke with the attending doctor. Low voices, tense. "He's still in danger," the doctor warned. "His condition's improving, but there was another attempt. Someone tried to tamper with his file. Change his medication orders." Carson's tone dropped. "We still have a leak." Sam's heart monitor beeped on. I didn't sleep that night. I curled beside his bed, and I watched. Because whatever war this was, it wasn't over, and I wasn't done. Not yet. Not as long as the man on that bed still had breath in him. Not as long as my legs could carry me, even if just to the edge of a mattress. Because loyalty doesn't end when the bullets stop flying. Sometimes it begins there. The days that followed were a blur of low voices and high stakes. Sam stayed in the ICU, body weak but mind sharpening with every hour. His voice was ragged, but the words still cut clear when he spoke. Maddie was the first to hear him say her name again. She ran from the room crying, cheeks blotched with relief. Ellie stayed beside him, reading aloud from books I didn't understand, and letters he hadn't yet read. Carson was always nearby, pacing, listening, planning. And I stayed as close to the bed as they'd let me. They moved my crate into the corner, but I rarely used it. I wanted to be where he was, where he could see me, where I could watch every breath rise and fall in his chest. We had both come too close to that line. One more dose, one more blow, one more delayed second, and either of us might have crossed it. I wasn't scared of dying. I'd been trained for danger, had stood between bullets and brothers before. But this felt different. I wasn't sure if this time I'd make it back.
The pain in my side grew worse. Breathing hurt. I hid it as long as I could. But dogs like me, we're not good liars. Our bodies speak louder than our barks. Carson noticed first. His breathing's shallow, he told the vet. He's not getting up like he used to. They ran tests, x-rays, took blood. Words were passed between them like secrets, but I could read the tone. It's internal. Complications from the last trauma. Maybe neurological. Could be progressive. The kind of words that end stories. Carson came to see me that night after the hospital lights dimmed. Sam had finally drifted into sleep. Ellie curled beside him in the visitor chair. Carson pulled up a stool in front of me, his eyes red, his lips pressed tight like a man holding back a dam. He didn't say much at first, just let the silence sit between us. Then he reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a photo. It was old, creased at the edges. A snapshot from years ago. Me, Tommy, and Sam, all in the grass behind the precinct. Tommy's arms slung around Sam's shoulders, both of them laughing. I was caught mid-leap, mouth open, tail a blur. Damn, we were all younger, Carson muttered. He turned the photo toward me. He would have wanted you to rest now, Rex. You've done enough. I licked his hand, weakly. Because the thing was, I hadn't. Not yet. Not until I knew Sam was safe. Not until someone answered for what they tried to bury. I didn't sleep that night. Just watched the stars from the window, remembering other skies. Remembering a voice that once whispered, "We don't get to quit, buddy. We just keep going until someone else can take the torch." But what if there was no one left to take it? The next morning, Sam asked for me by name. His voice had that old scratch to it again. Familiar, worn like boots. "Where's my boy?" he rasped. Ellie smiled through tears. "He's here." He never left. They brought me to his bedside. I stood, even though my legs trembled, pressed my head into his hand, even though every muscle in my body screamed. And he whispered something so soft I almost didn't hear it. "If you don't wake up tomorrow, Rex, I'll carry the rest of this for you." I blinked once. My chest tightened, because part of me knew he might have to. That afternoon, a nurse gave me something through the IV they'd placed in my paw. Said it would help with the pain. I didn't resist. I was too tired, too full of memory. The world dulled. Sounds became distant. Lights dimmed at the edges. I heard Maddie's laugh in the hallway. Heard Carson's voice say, "It's time." And just before my eyes closed, Sam reached out again. He rested his hand on my neck, held it there. "You saved me," he said. If I could have spoken, I would have told him, "No, you saved me too." Because that's the thing about partners. You don't always know which one's holding the other up until everything falls apart. And even then, sometimes it's both. So if this is the last chapter I get, if I don't wake up again, tell them this story. Tell them about Tommy and the field in Fort Bragg. Tell them about the road that shook and the Humvee that didn't make it. Tell them about Ellie and Maddie and Sam. Tell them I kept barking, even when no one listened. Tell them I stayed, because I loved them, and because they were worth it. The first thing I remember was the smell of grass. Not hospital air, not antiseptic, not the cold scent of steel tables and rubber gloves. Grass, damp from dew, sunlight creeping through pine, and wind. I opened my eyes, slow. The world came back in pieces. Shapes first, blurry, shifting, then colors, then faces. Sam's was the first one I saw.
He was sitting beside me on a weathered bench, his left hand resting on my side, his right gripping a cane. His eyes were tired, but bright. He was breathing. So was I. "You made it," he whispered. I tried to lift my head. Couldn't. Didn't matter. His hand found my ear, scratched the way only he ever could. We both did. Turns out the poison in my blood didn't take. Not all the way. The bleeding stopped. The seizures never came. And slowly, slower than anyone wanted to admit, I got stronger. So did Sam. The doctors called it improbable. I called it loyalty. We recovered together, side by side. They moved us to a rehab clinic in the hills north of town. Quiet place, trees, room to walk, to breathe. Maddie came every Saturday with a basket full of peanut butter crackers and a new crayon drawing. Carson stopped by too. Brought updates, stories, headlines. Turned out Sam's files, hidden deep in a hollowed-out law book in his office, had everything. Names, dates, bank accounts. It wasn't just Briggs or Denton. It went higher. The mayor, the DA, even a federal liaison out of D.C. who'd been feeding information to the wrong side for years. One by one, they fell. Not with shouts or gunfights, but with evidence. Sam had built a case so airtight even the snakes couldn't slip through. And when the dust settled, they offered him a choice: retire quietly or rebuild everything. He chose the second. The day he was sworn back in, I walked beside him, still limping but proud, still scarred but whole. The crowd clapped. Maddie cheered. Ellie cried. Carson handed him the badge. "You've earned this twice over," he said. Sam pinned it on, then knelt and whispered, "He earned it with me." The chief's office didn't change much. Same desk, same chair, same blinds that stuck on the left side. But this time, my bed was by the window. Soft, thick fleece. New toys I never played with. Water bowl that got cleaned every morning. Sam worked late some nights, but never too late. He'd always stop to sit beside me for a minute. Say nothing, just breathe. One evening, months after the trial ended, and the headlines faded, he walked me to the park. Just the two of us. He tossed the ball. I didn't chase it. My legs weren't what they used to be. Didn't matter. We sat by the lake, watching the sun sink low. "You know," he said, "when I thought I was going to die in that box, all I could think about was you." I leaned into his leg. He chuckled. "Not Ellie, not the department, just you. Barking your head off somewhere, refusing to quit." His voice dropped. "Part of me hoped you'd come." I nudged his hand. "I should have known better." "Of course you would." The breeze shifted. Geese flew overhead. Leaves skittered down across the path. And I knew deep in my chest that this was it. The last chapter. Not because something was wrong, but because the storm was over. Tommy's voice still lived in my ears. Maddie's laugh still danced around the house. Ellie sang to herself when she cooked. Carson got promoted and still brought me jerky on Fridays. The world didn't need my teeth anymore, didn't need my bark, but it still let me stay, and that was enough. I still sleep at Sam's feet, still rise when he stands, still watch the door, even now, even here, because loyalty doesn't retire, love doesn't expire. And some of us were never meant to do anything else. I'm not a soldier anymore. I'm not a weapon. I'm not even the hero they wrote about in the papers. I'm just a dog, one who was loved, one who never stopped loving back. And if this is the last story I get to tell, let it be that. I'm still here, at his feet, where I've always belonged. If any part of my story felt familiar, if you've ever waited at a door that never opened or stood beside someone you loved and refused to leave, just type 1 in the comments. That's all. No need to explain. I'll know what you mean. And if you'd like to walk with me a little longer, hear the rest of what I've carried.
go ahead and tap that subscribe button. Not because you have to, but because maybe, just maybe, there's still more worth listening to. I've seen things most dogs don't, and I've kept quiet for a long time. But not anymore. More stories are coming. And I'll be here, waiting at your feet, when you're ready to listen again.